When a man chooses to share his problems, it is not just a casual act, it is an expression of courage that often goes unacknowledged in a world where societal norms have long conditioned men to suppress their feelings. From an early age, boys are taught to toughen up, to be strong, and to hold their emotions close. This conditioning creates a barrier, making it difficult for many men to openly discuss their vulnerabilities, fears, or struggles. So when a man decides to break through these ingrained patterns and tells you about his problems, he is doing something profound. He is stepping outside of the expectations placed upon him and choosing to reveal a part of himself that he has likely kept hidden for a long time. This act of vulnerability is not easy. It requires him to confront the fear of being judged, misunderstood, or dismissed. Think about the courage it takes to admit that something is wrong in a world that often equates masculinity with stoicism and invincibility. For him, sharing his problems is not about seeking pity or weakness. It's about finding a safe space where he can unload the weight he has been carrying silently. That weight might include stress from work, financial struggles, emotional pain, or even unresolved childhood traumas. By speaking about it, he is taking the first step toward confronting it. And that step is no small feat. When someone opens up, it's easy to underestimate the depth of what is happening beneath the surface. You might hear his words and feel as though he's simply venting, but it goes much deeper than that. For a man, sharing his struggles can feel like exposing a wound, leaving himself vulnerable to criticism or rejection. Yet he chooses to do it because the burden has become too heavy to bear alone, or perhaps because he trusts you enough to show a side of himself that he keeps hidden from the rest of the world. This trust is significant. It means he sees you as someone who can hold space for his truth without tearing him down. In moments like these, it's important to recognize the bravery in his vulnerability. He is challenging the narrative that men must always have it together, that they must be the providers, the problem solvers, the ones who never falter. When he speaks about his problems, he is admitting that he too is human. This humanity is something we often overlook when we focus solely on the societal roles that men are expected to fulfill. But by choosing to share his struggles, he is claiming his right to be seen as a complete person, one with strengths and weaknesses, triumphs and struggles, confidence and doubt. However, this vulnerability doesn't come without risk. Men who open up are often met with skepticism or ridicule. They might hear phrases like "man up" or "don't be so sensitive," which only reinforce the belief that showing emotion is a flaw rather than a strength. These dismissive responses are part of the reason why many men choose to remain silent about their challenges. The fear of being labeled as weak can be paralyzing. It's a fear that keeps them locked inside their own minds, battling their demons alone. So when a man decides to speak up, he is overcoming not only the internal barriers of pride and fear, but also the external pressures of societal judgment. As someone on the receiving end of this vulnerability, it's crucial to understand the magnitude of what's happening. When he opens up, he is offering you a glimpse into his inner world, a world that he may not even fully understand himself. His problems may be deeply rooted or multifaceted, and the act of sharing them is his way of beginning to unravel the complexities. It's not about expecting you to solve his issues or provide immediate answers. It's about finding relief in the act of verbalizing his struggles. Speaking them aloud transforms them from abstract burdens into tangible challenges that can be addressed over time. The courage it takes for him to articulate his problems is compounded by the hope that he will be met with understanding rather than criticism. He is seeking validation, not in the sense of wanting you to agree with everything he says, but in the sense of feeling heard and valued. For many men, the act of sharing is less about the words themselves and more about the connection they create. It's about knowing that they are not alone, that someone else is willing to stand beside them in their moment of need. In a world that often equates masculinity with silence, breaking that silence is an act of defiance against outdated norms. It is a declaration that being strong doesn't mean being emotionless. In fact, it's quite the opposite. True strength lies in the ability to confront one's emotions head-on and to seek support when it's needed. This courage, however, is often invisible to those who don't take the time to understand it. It's easy to misinterpret a man's openness as complaining or weakness, but doing so undermines the very strength it takes to share in the first place. By choosing to speak about his problems, he is also setting an example for others. He is showing that it's okay to break free from the constraints of societal expectations and to embrace one's humanity fully. This act of vulnerability, while deeply personal, has a ripple effect. It challenges those around him to rethink their own beliefs about masculinity and emotional expression. It opens the door for deeper connections, not just with him, but with others who may feel inspired by his courage. When someone chooses to open up about their problems, especially a man, it is a profound moment that requires the active involvement of the listener. Listening in such instances is not just about passively hearing the words being spoken. It is a deliberate, intentional act of presence and connection that goes far beyond surface-level communication. It requires focus, empathy, and a willingness to set aside your own judgments and distractions. In a world filled with noise, interruptions, and superficial conversations, the act of truly listening has become rare, but it is also incredibly powerful. When a man tells you about his struggles, he is not simply recounting events or listing grievances. He is engaging in a process of emotional release and seeking a sense of understanding. For him, speaking aloud about what's weighing on him is a way of externalizing those burdens, of taking them out of his own mind where they might have festered and grown heavier over time. He is looking for a safe space where his thoughts and emotions can be acknowledged without judgment or immediate solutions. This is where the role of the listener becomes critical. Your ability to provide that space can make a significant difference in how he processes his feelings and moves forward. Listening in such moments is about more than just nodding or waiting for your turn to speak. It's about being fully present in the interaction. This means setting aside your phone, your preoccupations, and even your desire to jump in with advice. Instead, it's about focusing entirely on the person in front of you, on their words, their tone, and the emotions behind what they're saying. It requires a level of patience and self-discipline that is not always easy to muster, especially if you're someone who feels compelled to fix problems or offer solutions. But in these moments, solutions are not what is needed most. What is needed is the act of being heard. When you listen without interruption, you give the other person the space to fully articulate their thoughts. This is not always a straightforward process. People often need time to work through their feelings, to find the right words, or to even understand what they're truly trying to say. By giving them that time and space, you're allowing them to engage in a form of self-exploration. They may start to uncover layers of their emotions that they hadn't previously recognized. They might begin to see connections or patterns in their thoughts that only become clear through the act of speaking them aloud. In this sense, listening is not just a passive activity, it is an active contribution to their healing process. Empathetic listening also involves tuning into what is not being said. Often people communicate as much through their tone, body language, and pauses as they do through their words. A man might downplay his struggles, making statements like, "It's not a big deal," or "I'll handle it," even though his tone or posture suggests otherwise. As a listener, it's important to pick up on these subtle cues and to respond in a way that shows you're paying attention. A simple comment like, "It sounds like this has been really hard for you," can go a long way in making someone feel understood and validated. The act of listening also requires setting aside your own ego. It's natural to want to relate the other person's experiences to your own, to say things like, "I know exactly how you feel," or to share similar situations you faced. While these responses often come from a place of wanting to connect or help, they can inadvertently shift the focus away from the person who is opening up. Instead of feeling heard, they might feel as though their experience is being minimized or overshadowed. True listening means resisting the urge to make the conversation about yourself and keeping the focus entirely on the person in front of you. Another key aspect of listening is refraining from judgment. When someone shares their struggles, they are often grappling with feelings of shame, guilt, or inadequacy. The last thing they need is to feel judged for their emotions or decisions. Even if you don't fully understand or agree with what they're saying, it's important to approach the conversation with an open mind and heart. Judging them, even unintentionally, can cause them to shut down and retreat back into silence. On the other hand, responding with empathy and understanding can encourage them to continue opening up, deepening the trust between you. Listening also involves validating the other person's feelings. Validation doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they say or feel. It simply means acknowledging their emotions as real and valid. Statements like, "That sounds really tough," or "I can see why you'd feel that way," can make a world of difference. They let the other person know that their feelings matter and that it's okay to express them. This kind of validation can be incredibly healing, especially for someone who has been carrying their struggles in isolation. In moments of deep listening, you might find yourself tempted to offer advice or solutions. While there is certainly a time and place for problem solving, it's important to recognize that these moments are not about fixing things, they are about connection. Offering unsolicited advice can sometimes come across as dismissive, as though you're trying to rush past their emotions to get to a resolution. Instead, focus on being present and supportive. If they ask for advice, offer it thoughtfully and without pressure. Otherwise, simply being there and listening can be the most valuable thing you can do. Listening with empathy and presence is not just beneficial for the person sharing their struggles, it can also be transformative for you as the listener. It allows you to deepen your understanding of others, to build stronger connections, and to practice compassion in a way that enriches your own emotional intelligence. It is a gift you give to the other person, but it is also a gift you give to yourself. In a world that often prioritizes quick fixes and surface-level interactions, the act of truly listening is a rare and precious act of care. When a man shares his problems with you, one of the most vital responses you can offer is empathy. Empathy is not simply about feeling sorry for someone or sympathizing with their plight. It is about stepping into their emotional world and understanding what they are experiencing from their perspective. This act of emotional resonance creates a bridge of connection that allows the other person to feel seen, heard, and valued. Empathy in this context becomes a powerful tool for creating trust and opening the door to deeper communication and understanding. Empathy begins with an intention to understand. When a man opens up, he may not always express his feelings in a way that is clear or straightforward. Sometimes his words might be clouded by frustration, anger, or defensiveness, masking the vulnerability that lies beneath. Your role is to look past these surface emotions and recognize the deeper pain or concern he is trying to convey. This requires patience and the willingness to sit with discomfort. It's not always easy to witness someone else's struggles, especially if their emotions are intense or if their pain triggers something within you. But empathy asks you to set aside your own reactions and focus entirely on the other person's experience. To demonstrate empathy, you must also resist the urge to immediately respond with solutions or judgments. When someone shares their problems, they are not necessarily looking for an answer, they are looking for understanding. By rushing to fix the issue or offering advice, you risk undermining their need to feel heard. Instead, focus on validating their emotions. Acknowledge the difficulty of what they are going through with statements like, "That sounds incredibly challenging," or "I can't imagine how hard that must be for you." These simple expressions of empathy can make a profound impact as they show that you are not only listening but also truly comprehending the weight of their emotions. Another key aspect of empathy is tuning into nonverbal communication. Much of what someone is feeling is often conveyed through their body language, tone of voice, and facial expressions rather than their words. A man might downplay his struggles verbally while his slumped shoulders or hesitant pauses reveal the true extent of his distress. By paying attention to these subtle cues, you can gain a deeper understanding of his emotional state and respond in a way that meets his unspoken needs. For example, if you notice hesitation in his voice, you might say, "It seems like there's more on your mind," creating space for him to share further. Empathy also involves recognizing and respecting the courage it takes to be vulnerable. Many men are conditioned to suppress their emotions and deal with their problems silently. When they choose to break this pattern and share their struggles, it is a significant act of trust and bravery. Acknowledge this by creating a safe and supportive environment for them to express themselves. Avoid interrupting, minimizing their feelings, or making comparisons to your own experiences. Instead, let them guide the conversation at their own pace, offering gentle encouragement when needed. This approach not only shows empathy but also reinforces their sense of agency and autonomy. An important part of practicing empathy is managing your own emotions during the interaction. Hearing about someone else's pain can sometimes trigger feelings of sadness, frustration, or even helplessness. While it's natural to have these reactions, it's important to remain focused on the other person rather than letting your own emotions take center stage. If you find yourself becoming overwhelmed, take a deep breath and remind yourself that your role is to support, not to take on their burden. Empathy is about sharing the emotional load, not carrying it entirely yourself. Empathy also extends to understanding the context of someone's struggles. Problems rarely exist in isolation. They are often shaped by a complex web of circumstances, relationships, and personal history. When a man shares his problems, try to consider the broader picture. What pressures might he be facing at work or at home? What societal expectations or personal insecurities might be influencing his feelings? By taking these factors into account, you can offer a more nuanced and compassionate response that acknowledges the full scope of his experience. In practicing empathy, it's crucial to avoid assumptions. Everyone experiences emotions differently, and what might seem like a minor issue to you could feel overwhelming to someone else. Instead of jumping to conclusions about what they are feeling or why they are feeling it, ask open-ended questions to gain clarity. Questions like, how has this been affecting you, or what has been the hardest part of this for you? Invite them to share their perspective and deepen the conversation. This not only enhances your understanding, but also shows that you value their unique experience. Empathy also requires a degree of humility. You don't need to have all the answers or fully understand everything they are going through. What matters most is your willingness to be present and to care. Sometimes simply saying, I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you, can be one of the most empathetic responses you can give. It communicates that you are not trying to diminish or solve their problems, but are instead offering your support and solidarity. Finally, empathy is not a one-time act, but an ongoing practice. It involves consistently showing up for the people in your life, especially during their most difficult moments. This might mean checking in on them after the initial conversation, offering a listening ear when they need it, or simply being a steady presence in their life. Over time, these acts of empathy build a foundation of trust and connection that can weather even the most challenging storms. When a man shares his problems with you, one of the most significant ways to show support is through active listening. Active listening goes beyond simply hearing his words. It involves fully engaging with his message, understanding his emotions, and responding thoughtfully to demonstrate that you are present and invested in the conversation. This form of listening creates a safe space for him to open up, allowing him to feel understood and validated. Active listening begins with your physical presence. When a man chooses to share his struggles, ensure you are fully present and free from distractions. Put away your phone, turn off the TV, and face him with an open posture that conveys attentiveness. Maintaining eye contact is essential, as it shows that you are focused on him and what he is saying. Your body language should be relaxed and inviting, signaling that you are receptive to hearing him out without judgment. A slight nod or leaning in can further indicate your engagement, encouraging him to continue sharing. As he begins to speak, listen with the intent to understand, not to respond. This means resisting the urge to formulate your reply or jump in with advice while he is talking. Instead, focus entirely on his words and the emotions behind them. Pay attention not just to what he is saying, but how he is saying it. Notice his tone of voice, pace of speech, and any pauses or hesitations. These nuances can reveal a lot about his emotional state and the weight of the issues he is discussing. One of the key elements of active listening is providing verbal acknowledgments that encourage him to continue. Phrases like "I see that makes sense" or "I understand" show that you are following along and valuing what he is saying. Be careful, however, not to interrupt or overuse these phrases, as they can come across as dismissive if not used genuinely. Instead, use them sparingly and sincerely, ensuring they align with the natural flow of the conversation. Paraphrasing is another powerful tool in active listening. After he has shared a thought or concern, restate what you heard in your own words to confirm your understanding. For example, if he talks about feeling overwhelmed at work, you might respond with, "It sounds like you're under a lot of pressure right now, and it's been hard to manage everything." Paraphrasing not only shows that you are paying close attention, but also gives him the opportunity to clarify or expand on his feelings if needed. It's also important to ask open-ended questions that invite him to elaborate. These questions should be non-judgmental and framed in a way that encourages him to explore his thoughts and emotions more deeply. For example, you might ask, "Can you tell me more about what's been bothering you, or how has this situation been affecting you personally?" Open-ended questions demonstrate your genuine interest and willingness to listen without imposing your own perspective. Silence is another valuable aspect of active listening. While it might feel uncomfortable at times, silence gives him the space to gather his thoughts and express himself fully. Avoid rushing to fill the gaps or assuming what he is about to say. Sometimes the most meaningful parts of a conversation emerge in those moments of quiet reflection. By allowing silence, you communicate patience and respect for his process. Empathy and validation are integral components of active listening. As he shares his struggles, acknowledge his feelings without minimizing or dismissing them. If he expresses frustration, sadness, or anger, validate those emotions by saying something like, "I can understand why you'd feel that way." Or, "That sounds really tough." Validation doesn't mean you have to agree with everything he says. It simply means recognizing and accepting his emotions as valid and real. While listening, be mindful of your own biases or preconceived notions. Avoid making assumptions about his experiences or jumping to conclusions based on your own perspective. Each person's challenges are unique, and what might seem like a simple issue to you could feel overwhelming to him. Approach the conversation with curiosity and an open mind, allowing him to share his story without fear of judgment. Nonverbal cues play a crucial role in active listening. In addition to maintaining eye contact and an open posture, small gestures like a reassuring touch on the arm or a gentle nod can convey your support and understanding. These nonverbal signals often speak louder than words, creating a sense of connection and trust. Be mindful, however, of his comfort level with physical touch, as not everyone responds the same way. Avoid interrupting or offering unsolicited advice unless he explicitly asks for your input. Sometimes when a man shares his problems, he isn't looking for solutions, but rather for someone to listen and empathize. Offering advice too quickly can come across as dismissive or imply that you think he cannot handle the situation on his own. Instead, focus on creating a supportive environment where he feels empowered to navigate his challenges in his own way. Active listening also involves being aware of your own emotions and reactions during the conversation. If his problems resonate deeply with you or trigger your own experiences, take a moment to center yourself and refocus on him. It's natural to feel a range of emotions when someone shares their struggles, but active listening requires setting aside your feelings to prioritize his needs. Finally, follow up after the conversation to show that you genuinely care about his well-being. Check in with him later to ask how he's doing or if there's anything you can do to support him further. This follow-up demonstrates that your concern wasn't limited to the moment of the conversation and that you are committed to being there for him as he works through his challenges. When a man shares his problems with you, it's natural to feel the urge to jump in and fix things, especially if you care deeply about him. However, it's crucial to understand that rushing to offer solutions can sometimes do more harm than good. Often men aren't necessarily seeking answers or advice when they open up. They're looking for someone to genuinely hear them, understand them, and validate their emotions. Providing solutions too quickly can inadvertently make them feel as though their struggles are being minimized or that they lack the ability to resolve them on their own. The first step in resisting the urge to offer solutions is recognizing that emotional support is often more valuable than practical solutions. Men are frequently socialized to suppress their emotions, so when they do open up, it's a significant moment that deserves careful attention. Instead of focusing on fixing the problem, focus on being fully present for him. Allow him the space to share his thoughts and feelings without interruption. This can be challenging, especially if you believe you know how to help, but it's important to prioritize his need to be heard over your desire to offer assistance. Listening without judgment or the need to solve the issue can also help strengthen your relationship. When you resist the urge to fix things, you demonstrate that you trust his ability to navigate his challenges. This trust can foster a deeper connection as he feels respected and valued for his own capacity to manage his life. Additionally, by refraining from jumping in with solutions, you give him the opportunity to process his thoughts and emotions fully. Sometimes simply talking through a problem can help a person find clarity and perspective, leading to a solution they might not have reached if the conversation were cut short by unsolicited advice. Another reason to avoid immediately offering solutions is that it can shift the focus of the conversation away from his emotions and onto the practicalities of the problem. While practical advice has its place, the initial stages of a conversation about struggles are often more about processing emotions than finding answers. If you jump to problem-solving mode too quickly, you might miss the deeper emotional layers of what he's experiencing. For example, if he's talking about a work issue, the problem might not be about the specific task he's struggling with, but rather about feelings of inadequacy, stress, or frustration that underlie the situation. By giving him the space to explore these emotions, you allow the conversation to address the root cause rather than just the surface-level problem. It's also important to recognize that offering solutions can sometimes come across as dismissive, even when it's well-intentioned. If a man feels like you're trying to fix his problem, he might interpret it as a lack of faith in his ability to tackle the situation. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy or frustration, especially if he perceives your advice as unsolicited or irrelevant. Instead, focus on validating his feelings and showing empathy. Simple statements like "that sounds really challenging," or "I can see why you'd feel that way," can go a long way in making him feel supported without overshadowing his autonomy. Another aspect of this dynamic is understanding that men often have their own way of processing problems. While some might be open to brainstorming solutions, others might prefer to take their time, mull over the issue, and come to their own conclusions. By refraining from immediately offering advice, you respect his process and allow him to approach the situation in a way that feels natural to him. If he does eventually seek your input, he will do so because he feels ready and because he trusts that you're offering advice with his best interest in mind. Instead of rushing to provide solutions, consider asking open-ended questions that encourage him to reflect on his situation. Questions like, "What do you think would help in this situation?" or "How are you feeling about this right now?" can help guide the conversation without imposing your perspective. These questions show that you're engaged and supportive while also empowering him to take ownership of the problem. They also demonstrate that you value his insight and trust his ability to work through the issue. It's also helpful to acknowledge that not every problem has an immediate solution, and some challenges require time and patience to resolve. By accepting this reality, you can approach the conversation with a sense of calm and openness rather than feeling pressure to fix things right away. This mindset can be incredibly reassuring for him, as it shows that you're willing to walk alongside him through the journey, no matter how long it takes. Sometimes offering solutions too quickly can backfire if the advice isn't applicable or aligned with his values and priorities. For example, if you suggest a course of action that he disagrees with, it can create tension or make him feel misunderstood. By holding back on advice, you allow him to express his own ideas and preferences, which can lead to a more constructive and collaborative discussion if he does seek input. Finally, remember that providing emotional support doesn't mean you can't eventually offer practical help if it's appropriate and requested. However, it's essential to let him guide the conversation and indicate when he's ready for advice. In the meantime, focus on being a compassionate listener who validates his experience and respects his autonomy. This approach not only helps him feel supported, but also strengthens the foundation of trust and mutual respect in your relationship. When a man shares his problems with you, one of the most profound ways to respond is to offer him encouragement and reassurance. In moments of vulnerability, men often seek a sense of hope and validation, even if they don't explicitly say so. Encouragement doesn't mean offering empty platitudes or forcing optimism onto the situation. It means genuinely affirming his strengths, acknowledging his efforts, and reminding him that he has the capacity to overcome whatever he's facing. This kind of reassurance can be deeply grounding and transformative for someone who feels weighed down by their struggles. Encouragement begins with recognizing the courage it takes for a man to open up about his problems. Society often places expectations on men to be stoic, to handle their issues independently, and to avoid showing weakness. By choosing to share his concerns with you, he's already breaking through these societal barriers, and that in itself is an act of strength. Acknowledging this can be a powerful first step in offering reassurance. Saying something like, "It takes a lot of courage to talk about what you're going through, and I admire you for that," can immediately help him feel seen and respected. Reassurance often involves reflecting on his past achievements and reminding him of his ability to navigate challenges. When a person is caught in the midst of a problem, it's easy to lose perspective and focus only on the difficulties at hand. You can help by gently reminding him of times when he faced similar challenges and came out stronger. For example, you might say, "I remember when you dealt with that tough situation at work and you found a way to handle it so well. I have no doubt you'll figure this out too." These reminders serve to reconnect him with his own resilience and build his confidence in tackling the current issue. Another way to offer encouragement is by validating his efforts, even if the problem hasn't been resolved yet. Sometimes people become so focused on the outcome that they fail to recognize the progress they're making along the way. By pointing out the steps he's already taken or the thoughtfulness with which he's approaching the issue, you can help him see that he's not stagnant or powerless. For instance, you might say, "I can see how much thought and effort you're putting into this. That shows how much you care about finding the right solution." Validation like this not only boosts his morale, but also reinforces the idea that his efforts matter regardless of the results. Encouragement also means helping him shift his. Another aspect of encouragement is showing faith in his ability to make the right decisions. When someone is dealing with a problem, they can easily become overwhelmed by doubt and second-guess their choices. By expressing confidence in his judgment, you can help alleviate some of that uncertainty. Phrases like, "I trust that you'll figure out what's best for you," or "You've got great instincts, I know you'll make the right call," can reinforce his belief in his own capabilities. This kind of affirmation can be particularly impactful if he's feeling unsure or vulnerable. Sometimes offering reassurance means simply being present and consistent in your support. Knowing that someone is there for him, no matter how long it takes to resolve the issue, can be incredibly comforting. This doesn't always require words. Small gestures like checking in, offering a listening ear, or even just spending time together can convey your unwavering support. Your presence alone can serve as a reminder that he's not facing his struggles alone, and that can make a world of difference. It's also important to tailor your encouragement to his personality and needs. Some men might appreciate direct affirmations of their strengths, while others might respond better to subtle gestures of support. Pay attention to his cues and adjust your approach accordingly. For example, if he seems uncomfortable with overt praise, you might focus more on quietly supporting his efforts and offering encouragement through actions rather than words. Reassurance often involves addressing fears and anxieties head-on. If he expresses worry about the future or doubt in his abilities, take the time to listen and empathize before offering a balanced perspective. Let him know that it's okay to feel uncertain and that those feelings don't diminish his worth or potential. You might say, "It's completely natural to feel unsure in situations like this, but you've faced uncertainty before and you've always found a way through. I have no doubt you'll do the same this time." By acknowledging his fears while also expressing confidence in his resilience, you create a space where he feels both understood and empowered. Lastly, encouragement is about planting seeds of hope without dismissing the challenges at hand. It's not about pretending everything is fine or glossing over the difficulty of the situation, but rather about reminding him that challenges are temporary and that better days are ahead. Hope can be a powerful motivator, giving him the strength to keep moving forward, even when the path seems uncertain. By offering this kind of reassurance, you help him see beyond the immediate struggles and reconnect with a sense of purpose and possibility. When a man shares his problems with you, one of the most important ways to offer support is by helping him to reframe his thinking. Often, when people are deeply entrenched in their struggles, they can become consumed by negative thoughts and emotions that cloud their perspective. These limiting thoughts can make a problem feel insurmountable, leading to a sense of hopelessness or despair. As someone who cares about him, you can play a pivotal role in helping him to shift his focus from the problem itself to a more constructive, solution-oriented mindset. Reframing begins with recognizing that how we interpret our problems can dramatically impact how we experience them. When a person is caught up in negative thinking, they often focus on the worst case scenario or the immediate discomfort, which only serves to amplify their distress. Instead of allowing his thoughts to spiral further into negativity, your role is to gently guide him towards seeing the situation from a different perspective, one that is more hopeful and open to possibility. One of the most effective ways to help him reframe his thinking is by encouraging him to focus on what he can control. In many situations, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of a problem, especially if it feels like there are so many factors outside of his control. However, the power of focusing on what is within his control is transformative. It can help him regain a sense of agency and reduce feelings of helplessness. You can ask questions like, what's one thing you can do today to move forward? Or what small step can you take right now to improve the situation? These questions invite him to break the problem down into manageable parts and highlight his ability to take action, no matter how small. Another aspect of reframing is helping him to see the potential for growth and learning within the challenge. When we face difficulties, it's easy to see them as setbacks or obstacles. However, challenges often contain valuable lessons that can shape our future. By reframing the situation as an opportunity for growth, you encourage him to view his struggles not as signs of failure, but as stepping stones toward becoming a stronger, wiser version of himself. You might say, I know this situation is tough, but sometimes these challenges lead to the greatest personal growth. You'll come out of this even stronger and more equipped to handle anything in the future. This shift in perspective can provide a sense of hope, allowing him to see beyond the immediate discomfort and recognize the long-term benefits that may arise from the experience. A key part of reframing is also addressing the negative self-talk that often accompanies difficult situations. When someone is struggling, they may begin to internalize negative messages about themselves, doubting their worth or ability to overcome the challenge. These thoughts can become self-fulfilling prophecies, leading to further feelings of inadequacy. By helping him to challenge these thoughts, you can play a significant role in shifting his mindset. Gently remind him of his strengths and past successes. You can ask, when have you faced something similar and overcome it? Or what strengths do you have that will help you through this? These questions encourage him to focus on his resources and resilience rather than on perceived weaknesses or shortcomings. Reframing is also about challenging all or nothing thinking, which often exacerbates negative feelings. When someone is consumed by a problem, it's easy to think in extremes, seeing things as either completely good or completely bad. For example, a setback at work might make him feel as though everything is falling apart, when in reality it's just one area of his life that needs attention. You can help him move away from these extremes by encouraging him to see the situation more holistically. You might say, yes, this situation is difficult, but it's not the entirety of your life. You have so many other things going well, and this is just one piece of the bigger picture. This helps him to regain perspective, reminding him that no single challenge defines his entire life or identity. Another way to help him reframe his thinking is by focusing on the bigger picture. Sometimes when people are mired in their immediate problems, they can lose sight of their larger goals and values. Encouraging him to reconnect with his long-term vision or sense of purpose can provide motivation and direction during difficult times. You might ask, how does this challenge fit into your bigger goals? Or what do you ultimately want to achieve, and how can this challenge help you get there? By helping him see the broader context, you empower him to view the problem as a temporary detour rather than a permanent roadblock. A powerful technique for reframing is the practice of gratitude. When someone is in the midst of a problem, it's easy to focus on what's going wrong and overlook the things that are going well. Encouraging him to reflect on what he is grateful for, even in the midst of hardship, can shift his focus toward positive aspects of his life. You might say, even though this situation is tough, what are 3 things you're grateful for right now? This simple shift in focus can change his emotional state and help him regain a more balanced perspective on his situation. Gratitude acts as an anchor, reminding him that there are always things to appreciate, even in the most difficult of circumstances. Another important element of reframing is helping him to detach from the emotional intensity of the situation. When we're deeply involved in a problem, it can be hard to think clearly as our emotions often cloud our judgment. By gently helping him step back and view the situation with more objectivity, you can help him make better decisions. You might ask, what would you tell a friend who was going through this, or if you were looking at this from the outside, how would you view the situation? These questions encourage him to detach emotionally from the problem and think more rationally, allowing him to see potential solutions that he might have missed in the heat of the moment. By reframing his thinking in these ways, you provide him with the tools to transform his experience of the problem. Instead of seeing himself as a victim of circumstance, he begins to view the challenge as something that he can manage, learn from, and ultimately overcome. This shift in mindset can create a sense of empowerment and optimism, enabling him to approach the problem with renewed strength and clarity.